All right, so we are group number 4 in social work 574A. Group members include Vanessa, myself, Margaret, Angelica, Lachey, and Traylisha. We are covering the topic human trafficking in runaway homeless youth. So I'm going to go ahead and begin on that first slide. Thank you. So what is homeless youth? We can say that if they're under the age of 18, including children and teens who have become homeless or who leave and remain away from home without parental permission and are subject to serious health, behavioral, and emotional problems. These youth have higher rates of risk factors for trafficking because they face poverty, unemployment, sexual abuse, mental health issues, and are aging out of the foster care system. And they definitely require immediate help to meet their basic needs of survival. It's during these life struggles, the homeless youth population easily fall prey to individuals who take advantage of the living situations and struggles. If they are raised by parents or family members who are involved in the commercial sex trade, addiction, or even gangs, the risk is even higher. What is the prevalence of homeless youth and human trafficking? Well, according to the National Network for the Youth website, 1 in 5 runaway and homeless youth are a victim of human trafficking, which includes forced sex and labor. So you really have to stop and think, what would you do for shelter, safety, food, and work if all of these combined was not provided for you as a child? What does this vulnerability feel like? In a study done on a detailed account of labor and sexual exploitation done by the homeless youth in protective care, one quote really stood out to me. And this child had said at the age of 15 years old that she had engaged in sex as a means of simply putting shoes on her feet when her mother couldn't afford to. Next slide. I wanted to really hone in on the nature of the problem that really stuck out to me. One of the most significant problems is the amount of help and teams of people who specifically work towards finding this population of trafficked youth. So there's just so many avenues when it comes to child forced labor and sex trafficking. There's not enough manpower to go around. There is a big challenge to fight this type of crime. And even for the victims, this can turn into something that's criminalized against them. So I really want to say that their help for the victims, it's not readily available. The victims are seen as criminals by the justice system far more often than none. When it comes to health problems and emotional problems, health problems can be a wide range of issues and concerns, anywhere from malnutrition, child pregnancy, abortion, broken bones, sickness, sexually transmitted infections and diseases. This can lead to an array of emotional problems that can be lifelong process battle, right? Something that's going to be very challenging for them to heal from. Behavioral and age conditioning, threats, and coercion. So getting children and teens involved in trafficking at such a young age really benefits their tracker. This is in regards to them being able to condition them into the lifestyle. So at such a young age, how will they know what's wrong if this is all they know? It's easier to make them believe in something and train them to cooperate as needed at a younger age. Long-time investment during the youth's journey. This week I started to watch a movie for one of our homework assignments. I believe it's Nefarious. And in that movie, they tell you if you get a child involved in sex or labor trafficking, you get a long-term investment. This child can be sold and resold numerous times, benefiting the captor for years down the line. If you choose to sell drugs, you get a one-time payment. The youth's journey can consist of a lifetime of conditioning for them to operate as demanded, where eventually, if no proper interventions happen to cross their path, they never escape or understand another way to live. The payroll and population, this can start to get into organized crimes, gains, and profits. This population is subject to organized crime where a community from gang members, pimps, parents, and politicians, right? We can go from the streets all the way to the high-end communities. where everybody profits, right? This leaves the youth much more prone to never leaving that lifestyle. So once this child was a struggling child in the need of protection and survival, is now an object in the welfare of their own community. And then faith. So how am I tying this into any research that we find today? There's a Bible passage that really stands out to me. It really hones in on finding some hope through the trials and tribulations in dealing with human trafficking. And that's found in Joel 2:25-26. It reads, I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten, the great locust, the young locust, and the other locusts, and the locust swarm, my great army that is sent against you. You will have plenty to eat until you are full. You will praise the name of the Lord your God, who has worked wonders for you. Never again will my people be ashamed. And it is in this Bible passage that God promises restoration, even from the most darkest times of life. The next slide.
Okay, so runaway youth, this is just to reiterate what Vanessa has spoken on. The youth.gov defines runaway youth as youth who have left home without parental or caregiver permission and stay away for one or more nights. Vanessa spoke about how this population is vulnerable and that they're at a higher risk of being victimized, and that they are in need of services such as medical services and other areas as well, mental health. And so I will be focusing on the homeless prevention and how important that is to decrease the risk factors for victimization. So for homeless prevention, there are numerous resources. However, what's most important is outreach. Providing outreach to the youth, to the homeless youth, provides education and provides resources to the youth so that they are off the streets. Those resources can include shelters. They have RHY programs, RHY, which is Runaway Homeless Youth Shelters. These shelters service children. They can come in. We have one actually in the high desert where children under the age of 18 come in and they receive services, mental health services, meals, bus vouchers, assistance with medical services. They get applications for things like Job Corps, and they get services to bridge that discomfort when they want to maybe reach out to family but don't have the support to do so. And so it provides them with a level of social support so that they are able to maybe reach out to a family member and maybe do family therapy to reconnect and reunite the family. They also have aftercare services that they provide. There's also things like transitional housing, which is another, again, shelter resource. And then they have BCP, which is the Basic Center program. And it is another shelter that the youth can go in for up to 21 days. And again, same concept where they receive food, clothing, medical care, crisis intervention, recreation programs, and things of that sort. So at this point, recognizing runaway youth and providing them with outreach resources is probably the most beneficial, getting out on the streets, hitting the grounds, and providing them with this service. So again, needs, shelter, social supports, the juvenile system. A lot of times, like Vanessa said, the victims are looked at as criminals. And so ensuring that they have resources for justice system that includes proper representation, being able to go into the courts and be represented as a runaway homeless youth in need of services and not just a criminal who is, being delinquent. Very important. Education, not just education for the youth on the streets, but also to schools, to families, to local businesses. Medical is extremely important. The runaway youth are really susceptible to getting sick, diseases, things like that, because they are out in the streets. They don't have any preventative care, so they're getting sick. They're turning to substance use, several things with medical. So it's important that they are connected to resources medically. Transportation is also a need. I know that there are several youth up here who there's not a lot of, I'm in Victorville, and so there's not a lot of resources in the high desert. But what is most beneficial to runaway youth is the ability to be able to move around. So the resource may not be here, but to be able to get a bus pass or a Greyhound ticket from one of these outreach programs or resources to be able to get down to, let's say, San Bernardino, where there are more services for them, or transitional housing, is extremely important for these youth. Next slide.
Okay. There are several laws and initiatives that address human trafficking. I will briefly go through some of them. The Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000, TVPA. This was the first federal law making human trafficking a crime and punishable under law. This act provided federally funded services to foreign human trafficking victims. It offered the T visa and the U visa for undocumented human trafficking victims. It also provided an opportunity for undocumented victims to obtain permanent resident status. This act has been reauthorized multiple times, and new laws have been created within these acts to ensure conviction and longer sentences, generate more rights and benefits for the victim, and develop programs to prevent human trafficking. The Justice for Trafficking Act of 2015. There was no longer a need to prove that an offender knew the sex trafficking victim was a minor. Production of child pornography was now considered illicit sexual misconduct and placed under federal law 18 USC 2423F, which gave convicted offenders longer sentences. Any assets that were forfeited in a sex trafficking case will be used for victim restitution. A $5,000 fine is to be paid by the convicted human trafficker, and proceeds will go to fund programs that would deter and prevent human trafficking. NAP, National Action Plan to Combat Human Trafficking. This initiative collaborates with government entities nationwide to address the human trafficking problem. Utilizing the voices, firsthand knowledge, and lived experiences of human trafficking victims, they formulate action plans, programs, and services for victims. Next slide, please. SB 970 requires hotel or motel employees who have potential contact with human trafficking victims to receive adequate training and education on human trafficking within 6 months of employment. Afterward, human trafficking awareness and education trainings are to be provided once every 2 years to employees. The California legislature is currently working on Senate Bill 14 to be passed. This bill will make the human trafficking of a minor a serious felony. If this bill is passed, it will be considered a strike under California 3 strikes laws, leading to a longer prison sentence for traffickers. Next. AB 2034 require businesses and establishments that may have potential contact with human trafficking victims to post a notice that states, if you or someone you know is being forced to engage in any activity and cannot leave, whether it is a commercial sex, housework, farm work, construction, factory, retail, or restaurant work, or any activity, text Be Free or call the National Human Trafficking Hotline or the California Coalition to Abolish Slavery and Trafficking. The signs must be 8.5 inches by 11 inches in size, written in a 16-point font. In 2021, 5,257 calls were made from California to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. The majority of the calls were regarding sex trafficking. Making these phone numbers seen in establishments such as airports and hotels is helping with the fight against human trafficking, not only in California, but nationwide.
According to the National Conference of State Legislators, 7% of youth, or 1.5 million children and adolescents, run away yearly. Youth often run away from home and become homeless due to family conflicts, abuse, and/or neglect. One thing I found interesting was males are more likely than females to have their first runaway episode before age 13. Females have a big spike at age 13 and nearly catch up with males, with both sexes having over half of all first runaways before the age of 14. Next slide, please. California requires all local educational agencies to establish homeless education program policies that are consistent with state laws and require these policies to be updated at least every 3 years. McKinley-Vento Homeless Assistance Act, Subtitle B, oh, I don't know what number that is, B. The education subtitle establishes the definition of homeless used by the United States Public School and authorizes rights and services to add the unique educational barriers, and challenges faced by children and youth experiencing homelessness.
And now that we've talked about the facts, I'm going to talk about some evidence-based practice interventions. So some of these interventions include mental health services. This is trauma-informed care. This population often has a history of violence, rejection, abuse, and poverty. It's important to be knowledgeable about trauma and work with traumatized youth in a way that does not re-traumatize them. Therapeutic interventions, which include cognitive behavioral therapy to help them process their trauma, dialectical behavioral therapy to help them accept their trauma and change their response in a way that allows them to heal. It's important to remember that some youth might perceive their situation as an improvement over the one they left behind when they first became involved in trafficking and became homeless. So another important thing is cultural competency. This means understanding the needs of who you're working with and the different cultures and utilizing and modifying services that will meet those needs. Another intervention is safety and housing. Housing has been identified to be one of the biggest needs of victims of human trafficking. With transitional housing being suitable for older youth to support effective strategies for successful transition to sustainable living. Effective programs offer training and job skills, teaching them what healthy relationships look like, and basic life skills training. And finally, safety planning. It's essential to help individuals identify and manage potential risks and dangers in their lives and create a plan on how to respond to get to safety. Our last slide just includes the references, and that's it. Thank you, everyone.